businesses with that capacity to not only run their business, to eliminate their use of power from the utility company, but also to make the grid cleaner, because we're putting a lot of solar power, particularly today, back into Duke's grid and making Duke's grid just a little bit cleaner. And that's a good thing. So when I charge my EV, that's a little bit cleaner than it would be otherwise. And that's the direction that we're moving in. And what Sierra Club is doing as far around the state with its members, calling our members and making sure that they vote, turn out and vote, and making sure that they understand that Amendment 4 is something that we want you to vote for.
Yeah, not only is it cleaner, it's more efficient, because when you have the solar right here, under in the campus, and you have it right on your roof, then you don't have that transmission line loss that you do when you put a big solar field up or a big power plant.
Right.
That's sort of away from the population. So you inferred that a little bit about the value of solar. It has a lot of value that keeping the energy dollars here at home. It's more efficient. It's right where you need it. It can go into the power plants, and it creates those home local jobs.
In fact, the value of solar, basically, that is, I don't know, maybe a lot of you or most of you know what that is. I'll discuss it real quick. There's been study after study commissioned, from the finance universities and think tanks in this country and abroad globally, that, hey, the solar electric system at your facility there, if you're generating clean power right there, distributed, as you mentioned, we don't have to have a big generation facility, through transmission lines, through substations, through another second distribution line, through more transformers, and then ultimately into the building. So, if your copier needs to hit one copy, you've got the power right there on the roof. That electrons, they flow right down in to run the copier. So the real value of solar is it helps the monopoly electric utilities. And what's the cost and the value of that solar electricity that's being generated right on the rooftop of the home or the rooftop of the business? Well, most every single study that has been commissioned states that value is quite high. Now, there are, I think it's like maybe 20 looked at.
Yeah, the Brookings Institute has an analysis of all this current studies.
And then there are a couple of them, I think 4, maybe less than 6, that have been funded by the Electric Power Research Institute for the electric monopoly utilities. And of course, the value that they come up with, it's just the price for the report, very, very low. So
that's the reality, and let me be the full capitalist on the board. People want jobs. People want to live their lives. People want to save money. People want to buy more food. People want to be able to provide for their families. And the solar industry, if you look at it, in my opinion, goes back to really, I guess you could describe it as a paradigm shift. If you went back to 1980 and you asked people, would we ever walk around with a laptop computer in our personal book bag, be able to take it into a classroom or into your office and have that cost $300? And a lot of people in 1980 would have said, well, you can carry around your 15-pound laptop and you can put it in your gigantic oversized briefcase that carries a computer, and you can pay $6,000 or more for it. And sure, you can have one. Today, as I said, you can buy a laptop computer, put it in a nice little Velcro bag. It fits very adorably in any one of those little bags, and it's about $299, $199, $359. So technology will catch up. Entrepreneurialism will do its job in America. And this is one of those scenarios where you're finding entrepreneurs, they're pushing forward, they're pushing the boundaries. You're pushing the boundaries with Tesla and electric cars. You're pushing the boundaries to allow American citizens to live the lives they've become accustomed to. And in this way, you get the bonus of also, across all spectrums, 1, earn money, 2, have better jobs, 3, save money, 4, have cleaner energy. And, it's wonderful what that does. I mean, we've had people in Florida with the plastic containers around your beer cans or your soda bottles that are now dissolvable. They're trying to push that forward. I'm sure everybody might have seen that, where you put them in the ocean and they dissolve. I mean, that's tremendous. One of the largest problems that people consider within our ecosystem, which is the waste that we throw into the rivers, into the waters. American entrepreneurs create a way to keep us able to drink what we want, to buy the packs that we've had, which is what, we have always done well, which is want to have a continuation of what we enjoy, but we're making it safer. And this is what happens with solar. Solar is cleaner energy. It benefits people who want cleaner energy. It also saves you money. And I only point that out, and I'll continue to point that out because I do think it's one of the greatest advantages for why Florida will, without even needing necessarily a large amount of new laws. We need laws that will remove the barriers, but Floridians will adapt to this because Floridians always do. You know, I was saying it before the conference started. It's why some of the neighborhoods we have, roads get built around neighborhoods we build up, rather than neighborhoods being built around roads in Florida, because people move in, we create communities, we adapt and we develop. And that's what's going to happen with this. People within their communities are going to adapt to newer, cleaner, safer, less expensive, and more jobs-oriented type of technologies that include clean energy.
I'd like to talk about, I'd like to go back to what Wayne was talking about, because I think that you were touching upon resiliency. And that resiliency is a word that you're hearing about a lot about more and more. And what does it mean? And it's how quickly can an area get back up on its feet after a storm or after a disaster. And if you look at what happened with Hurricane Sandy in the Northeast, tens of billions of dollars of damage, in part because it took so long to get the Northeast back up and running again, whether it's roads, clean water, utilities and electricity. So resiliency is not a term that was invented by the Sierra Club or by Audubon Society. It's a term that's actually generated from the reinsurance industry. Last I checked, a pretty clear-eyed lot, because they're paying for tens of billions of dollars in damages. And so some of the changes in planning you're seeing is coming out of these pushes from the reinsurance industry, and it's addressing resiliency. So another way to look, maybe like a real-life example of what resiliency is about from my perspective as a policymaker, it's cost-benefit risk analysis. You look at what it takes to build a road that's not going to go underwater. You look at what it takes to build a bridge that will withstand the bridge that will evacuate us. Will it survive a Category 5 storm? Now, if it's a small little bridge, like an old or Snell Isle, maybe we don't put all the money. A cost-benefit risk analysis would not support building that bridge up to support a Category 5 storm. Would you use a different model for siting a power plant or for working on the Howard Franklin Bridge? You betcha, because it makes sense, it makes economic sense to spend more money up front on strengthening those projects, because they will be around to withstand these increased challenges and stresses that we know that we could face. And that means that the community gets back on its feet quicker, people get to jobs quicker, businesses are back up and running quicker, and that's what resiliency is about. And that's what's forcing us to look at planning in a more responsible, forward-thinking way. We can't just do it on the cheap anymore and cross our fingers and hope we don't get hit.
Yeah. And all of this has a value. Mm-hmm. And I think it's the Hurricane Sandy, especially being in the Northeast, mm-hmm. Every day they weren't up and running was a real hit to the economy. Mm-hmm. So the fact that you can get up and running, the fact that you can have solar on your roof, these kinds of things, as we change our thinking, become market drivers, right? Once we put a value on something, where you put a value on the price of carbon, or you put a value on reducing water use or whatever, then you get a better source of economics. This idea that somehow building, some power plant and bringing natural gas or whatever in, from other states is somehow cheaper is simply not true. There's a power purchase agreement between a big solar company called Coronal in the Panhandle with Gulf Power on 3 military bases, and the power purchase agreement is for 5 cents a kilowatt hour. So the utility doesn't have to take the risk of building the solar at all. They just buy the power. And once you make an agreement, it doesn't go up or down. Now, if the utility goes to build a power plant and something happens and the cost of concrete, copper, and steel go up because of something in China happening or whatever, then they go back to the Public Service Commission for more money. You cannot build a new natural gas plant for 5 cents a kilowatt hour. But yet, that's what the utility's sort of motivation is, because once they put these big capital expenditures, we are paying that guaranteed rate of return on those capital expenditures, when they could be buying power less expensively from solar companies. And again, where you don't have all these other sort of problems. You're keeping the local jobs here. You're not using water. Water is going to be increasingly a big crisis, in the country. So this shift, I know, our main focus is talking about the Opportunity Amendment 4, but this shift in thinking changes the economics when you're really genuine, and as someone who's been working with reinsurers for a decade, you know, they do this with modeling, and they know that if you have a, you know, sort of less stress scenario, that's going to save people money.
Can I just spin off of that?
Yeah,
real,
and then James.
real quick. I moved here from New Jersey, and it's a deregulated state, along with Pennsylvania and New York, and I actually worked here in Dunedin selling green energy up there. So, I mean, if this amendment, since it's statewide, could kind of set the tone for where Florida might be able to head, if we could become a deregulated energy state, that doesn't mean the solar's got to be here or the wind has to be here. That money just gets regenerated back into those clean energy sources, and eventually it'll bring them all here. So the marketplace has lots of flexibility, and this is why this is so important. If we set the tone that we want options and we want clean air and energy, it's going to happen here in Florida. So I commend everybody here today, and hopefully that's where it'll take us. You know,
Emily, I know you and James have your hands up.
Actually, I had a question from a student perspective. So I mentioned earlier that, you know, the Student Green Energy Funds committee are interested in Amendment 4 is only practical. You know, we want to buy solar and we want it to be cost effective. But the students that I work with, and the students that make up the committee, and all of our sustainability clubs here, if you go upstairs right now, we're having a major recruiting event, and talk to those students, they're concerned about us getting jobs in these industries, not just solar, but, you know, sustainability positions like Brian's, or, you know, working on community projects like the Sierra Club does. So when we're talking about Amendment 4, we're talking about growing jobs and improving the industry. Do we know, and I don't know if anyone here can speak to this, do we know what the nature of that industry looks like right now? How big that is? How many jobs we might be
Well,
adding?
solar jobs.
Importantly, what is the nature of those positions? Are those positions that college graduates here from USF or SPC would be looking at?
Yeah, solar jobs are growing at 12 times the national average, and 1 in 83 jobs now is a solar job. Now that is specifically on solar, not, you know, the broader, you know, and as someone who's been working on climate and energy for 17 years, a little bit about, you know, how there wasn't any things in the field back when I started, and now we start to see positions like with the city and so on. When you limit carbon pollution, or you place a value on water, those become market drivers. When Germany made a commitment to moving to clean energy, that created a market driver that ultimately drove the cost down. And that's when industries build up and jobs become available, whether it's the sustainability director for Legoland, right? Or, I mean, there's so many within these industries where they're doing things internally, they're creating products, or they're marketing clean and green, or there's policy being developed. So I don't know that there's been a study. The Solar Foundation does the studies on things like 12 times the national average.
And I think what also will lead into the individual who owns a large solar company. So from a conservative perspective, from a free market perspective, when you have demand, you're going to create jobs, right? Now, what does that look like? Nobody's going to be able to answer effectively the exact amount of hiring. It'll be more than we have now, and quite more, actually, because what will end up happening is within a state that has the multiple upon multiple millions of homes, on top of all the millions of businesses that you're going to have, the commercial properties, the different properties that expand and contract and expand, get torn down, rebuild, gentrification.